Welcome to History with Zag, a channel where one can come to explore the grand events and people of the past. I'm your host Zag, and as always, thanks for watching. I have a question for you guys. Have you all ever been at your local, ice cream shop, and you're waiting in line, rubbing your tummy a little bit, and you're thinking, dang, I want some of that mint chocolate chip ice cream. And you look to your left and you see this girl standing with this dude. And your first question is, I wonder if this girl's a prostitute. Your second question, of course, is, well, maybe I should get the double chocolate chip. And then your third question is, well, maybe that girl is his wife. If you've thought that before, then congratulations, because that is applicable to our topic today. Recently, I've been reading the book The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, and it's awesome. You might know it from the movie starring Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is a wonderful actor. Forrest Gump is a national treasure, but that's not the only reason why the movie's good. I mean, you've got biblical history, action, and mystery. Mystery being the most important part of it because it's applicable to our topic today, Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene has been given a lot of different labels throughout history, but what's the truth? We're going to find it today, and we're going to jump back to 30 AD and figure out who was Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene, or Mary of Magdala, coming from the small town of Magdala off the coast of the Sea of Galilee, is well known for being a prostitute. But where do we get this? Well, we see in the Bible that she's mentioned around 13 times, which is more than a lot of New Testament characters. Rip Brother Barnabas. But I'm going to read 3 scriptures that really highlight her story, and we'll see what we can find. Luke 8:1-3 says, After this, Jesus traveled about from one town and village to another, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, and also some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had come out, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household, Susanna, and many others. These women were helping to support them out of their own means. Matthew 27:50, 54-56. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, Surely he was the Son of God. Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the Zebedee's sons. Mark 16:1-10 says, When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, Who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb? But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. Don't be alarmed, he said. You are looking for Jesus of Nazarene, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. So as we can see here, she was present at the crucifixion and was the primary witness to not only the empty tomb, but the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I mean, it is highly argued that without Mary Magdalene's testimony, Christianity wouldn't be around today as we know it. I mean, the whole reason Christianity exists is because they believe, or we believe, that Jesus is the Son of God, and he rose from the dead to save us from our sins so that we may go to heaven after death. So if we didn't hear this from Mary Magdalene saying, well, I saw him and he rose from the dead and we're saved, he beat death, then there is no point for Judaism to make the sect and to turn into Christianity. She is huge to the faith. But as you know, if you could have noticed with that, nowhere in there does it say that she's a prostitute. And furthermore, out of the 13 scriptures total that there are about her, none of them mention that she's a prostitute. So where do we get this idea? Is this the greatest Mandela effect? Well, yes and no.
Some say that the 7 demons actually represent the popular anime, The 7 Deadly Sins. But it's a stretch to say that the demons are the reason why she was a prostitute, and furthermore, many historians actually don't believe that these were demons at all, but instead they believe that these were early recordings of schizophrenic freaks. Mary Magdalene, who's also misinterpreted as many other women throughout biblical stories, and most famously interpreted as the woman who had the alabaster jar and anointed Jesus. And for those of you who don't know the story about this woman who anointed Jesus, rubbed his feet, had this strange alabaster jar, cried and wiped her tears with her hair while Jesus defended her to his guest. This story has been told many different times, and the events tend to differ, the time, place, between the book Matthew and the book Luke. It follows loosely as such in the King James Version, which a woman on the plane once told me was the only real version of the Bible.
Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, when a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of the most expensive ointment, and poured it on his head as he was at the table. When they saw this, the disciples were indignant. "Why this waste?" they said. "This could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Jesus noticed this. "Why are you upsetting the woman?" he said to them. "When she poured that ointment on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I tell you solemnly, wherever in all the world this good news is proclaimed, what she has done will be told also in remembrance of her." So the connection is made because this alabaster jar woman is depicted in an erotic nature or a scandalous nature, and because there's this preconception of Mary Magdalene being a prostitute, they automatically make that jump. The prostitution or the eroticness of the character is usually attributed to the messiness of the woman's hair. So back in biblical times, if a girl had messy hair, people would say, okay, she's a prostitute. And speaking of hair, why can I not grow facial hair? You ever wonder that? I'm 21 years old. I've been shaving pretty frequently. All I wanted as a kid was just a thick stash right up here. Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to happen. So if you have any idea how to grow a mustache when you can't, leave a comment down below. Mary Magdalene is also regularly connected to the wife at the wedding of Cana, the event where Jesus miraculously turned water into wine. And this connection is made again because the wife is considered to be a prostitute. And this happened after the wedding. The husband decided to join the 12 disciples and Jesus. And in her heartbrokenness and her confusion and all that was going on, she turned to prostitution. And also, let me just say here, what was this guy thinking? Obviously, many people, if they were back in those times, they would like to join the 12 disciples. But, you just got married to this woman. And, women weren't in a great spot at this time. They basically had to rely on their husband. And as soon as she gets married to him, the man just gets up and leaves like, sorry. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, I'll come back maybe. Prostitution is almost never okay to go to. But, you can't really blame her that much. The guy kind of messed up. But that's besides the point. If you realized in the alabaster jar story and in the wedding of Cana story, both of these characters go unnamed. So why do we have this tendency as people to see, alabaster jar unnamed, wife at the wedding of Cana unnamed? Let's fill in the blank with Mary Magdalene. Where do we get this? Male dominance in the church. When we look to Catholicism specifically, you got the Pope, the priests, and members of the clergy. They're all male-dominated roles. So when they look at this really important character of Mary Magdalene, they they don't want to acknowledge it because it threatens their job. I mean, she was so prominent in all these big events in Christianity, so it would make sense. Well, she's not that important because she was a prostitute and then got saved. Okay, well, that's why she was there. And if she was Jesus's wife, for instance, well, she had special privileges as Jesus's wife. So, okay, that's why she had Jesus revealed to her and all those other things. She wasn't able to just be respected, oh, her devotion and hard work got her to that position in, paleo Christianity. There was no discussion of that whatsoever. And, to add on to this, we see the first mention of this by the Catholic Church back in 591 by Pope Gregory. And he says some pretty damaging things to Mary's character. I'll read from here. It goes, "She whom Luke calls the sinful woman, whom John calls Mary, we believe to be the Mary whom 7 devils were ejected according to Mark. And what did these 7 devils signify, if not all the vices?" I hope that he's talking about the 7 Deadly Sins anime series. But he also talks about the connection with the alabaster jar. It goes, "It is clear, brothers, that the woman previously used the unguent to perfume her flesh in forbidden acts. What she therefore displayed more scandalously, she was now offering to God in a more praiseworthy manner. She had coveted with earthly eyes, but now through penitence these are consumed with tears. She displayed her hair to offset her face, but now her hair dries her tears. She had spoken proud things with her mouth, but in kissing the Lord's feet, she now planted her mouth on the Redeemer's feet. For every delight, therefore, she had had in herself, she emulated herself. She turned the mass of her crimes to virtues in order to serve God entirely in penance." Like I said, this was damaging, and it wasn't just damaging back in 591. It was damaging all throughout history. We would think that this is, like the Catholic Church has sent this character away and there is no more respect to be found. But actually in 1969, the Catholic Church did correct their ways and admitted that there's no evidence that she was a sex worker. So when we look at all of this, we can kind of throw away the idea that she was a sex worker. There's no document, scripture, or verse that says anything of the sort. So why don't we look at the flip side where it says, or many people say, that she was the wife of Jesus? Well, as mentioned in the beginning of this video, the Da Vinci Code does a great job of popularizing this idea, and it's not the only book. I mean, you have The Woman with the Alabaster Jar, Mary Magdalene and the Holy Grail by Margaret Starbird, and many other books go into really developing this theory. They use the Gospel of Philip as their primary evidence for this. It basically says in the Gospel of Philip that Mary Magdalene was Jesus' most beloved disciple, and on top of that, it says Jesus would regularly kiss her on the blank, and scholars believe that blank should be filled in with mouth. That looks like, yeah, she should be Jesus' wife, but the problem with that one is it's a non-canonical gospel, which means it's not included in the Bible, so it's not respected by the church, and it's probably like a knockoff of the early gospels. And on top of that, it was written 200 years after the life of Mary Magdalene. So it's not a good account of who she actually was. People also look to a fragment of papyrus dubbed the Gospel of Jesus' Wife, which says, it's written in Hebrew and it goes, or Coptic, and it goes, "And Jesus said to them, my wife." It was revealed by Harvard Divinity professor Karen King, and that looks like a slam dunk case again, but as soon as she revealed it, scholars just attacked her and said, this is not true, this is false, this is forgery, this is not true. And it held on for a while, but finally Karen King came out and said that, yes, it was probably a forgery. If I had to put money on it, I believe that she is the forger. Hit me up, Karen King. We can rough this out at another time. But those are the main evidences for it, and those are thrown away now. So what more evidence do we have to disprove this theory? If we want to look back to the Bible, Genesis 6, 1 through 7 talks about angels coming down and loving the beauty of women, and they actually cohabitate and have children called these Nephilim giants. And this goes on for a little bit. But God says that his spirit will not contend with mortals anymore, and he doesn't like it. And on top of that, seeing the wickedness of humanity, this is actually where he sends the flood. So as we know, if you've known a little bit about biblical stories, the only people to survive the flood are Noah and the animals on the ark and his family. So because of these angels coming down and having kids with humans, wipes out everything. So if Jesus was to come and say, which is fully God, fully human, go, I want to get married and start a family with Mary Magdalene, there's no way by looking at Genesis 6, 1 through 7 that God would give his consent for this. And then at that point, it would make Jesus sinful. So if he is sinless and he is perfect, it is argued from the Bible, at least, that there's no way he would have gotten with Mary Magdalene. So now we've disproven both sides. You know, we can't prove at all that she is the prostitute, and we definitely can't prove that she was the wife of Jesus. So where do we get these ideas? You know, where do we, historically, throughout not just the 21st century, like all throughout history, people have been calling her one of these names. How is this possible? And I think a quote by Robert Cargill says it best, actually. He says that there are many scholars who argue that because Jesus empowered women to such an extent early in his ministry, it made some of the men who would lead the early church later on uncomfortable. Cargill explains, and so there are two responses to this. One was to turn her into a prostitute. By turning Mary Magdalene into a prostitute, then she is not as important. It diminishes her in some way. She couldn't have been a leader, because look at what she did for a living. Cargill says, of course, the other response was to actually elevate Mary. Some argued she was actually Jesus' wife or companion. She had special status. So in conclusion, we see that women empowerment in the church, or women leadership roles in the church, were greatly neglected, and because of that, the name of Mary Magdalene was also neglected. She was essential to the Christian faith, but she had her name dragged through the mud for history. So where do we come out of this? Well, we know that she wasn't either or, and if you ask me, I believe that she was a devoted Christian, early Christian, and a devoted follower of Jesus, and someone to be respected. I mean, she definitely wasn't a Meg. She wasn't a Meg. She wasn't a Lewis. And if you had to ask me, she might have been more of a Joe. So thank you so much for watching. It's been great talking to you guys. I hope you enjoyed my video. I need a lot of work on this, so if you have any recommendations or feedback, please let me know in the comments. I just want to let you know, I did not read the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I actually just used that as a part for the skit. So now you know I lied to you the entire time. But thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.